Welcome back to the channel, good friends. Brian from Apex Detail. This is the second part of the one-step comparison. In part one, we did a cut comparison, and there were two that really stood out, and I agree with most of you down in the comment section. When it comes to cut, that's where things are really going to stand out the most when it comes to one-steps. As you're going to see here in part two, things are really going to tighten up a bit, but there are some slight differences that I do want you to see. We have these 5 fine one-steps on the panel: Extreme Solutions, SONAX, 3D, we have Coach Chemi, and we have the last cut. We have them in their designated test area. We're going to take a trip front and back with that same Eurofiber pad we used in the first video to measure cut, because these pads can also cut and finish. Starting out, hazed over, the gloss on this panel averages out to somewhere around 66.4 gloss units, and we'll write that down, and we'll have something to compare as we correct and bring clarity and gloss back to this panel using each one of these fine one-steps. You can see how it's hazed over on the panel here. We'll start out with the Koch Chemi F601, and we'll put 3 pea-sized drops on the polisher. We'll take a trip up and back between the 3rd and the 4th speed setting. Exact same pressure, speed, and correction speed that we used in the cutting portion of this series. This here will be simulating the haze that could be left over from a multi-step correction, especially if you're using a wool pad or a heavy cut compound, and you need to clear it up and bring high gloss and perfect clarity back to the panel after the correction. You don't have to stick with the Eurofiber pad. It all depends, and again, I mentioned this in the first video, but the results and what I'm doing here is very subjective and can change and vary depending on your environment, what you're working on, the type of clear, soft, medium, or hard, the imperfections that you're looking to remove or chase after, and just how far you want to cut into that clear coat. So with these fine one-steps, you want to surround yourself with many pads. You only need the one step, but in order to chase after an imperfection that is either light or deep, you're going to have to do a test spot. And I usually do 2 or 3 test spots to find that the combination that is just right for the situation. And every situation is going to be different. The F601, fantastic to work with. These one-steps, they won't dust on you, and they're easy to wipe off. Now, there are some situations where that could change if you're working on extremely soft clear coat. It gets a little grabby with some of the polishes, and depending on the temperature, and if you're working in direct sunlight, that will affect it as well. So let's use a panel prep to make sure there's no fillers with these one-steps. I will do another short series similar to this with all-in-ones. So they are basically one-steps that add protection, whether it be carnauba or a montane wax or a sealant or SiO2, and we'll throw a bunch on the same panel, and there we're going to see even more differences than what we see with these one-steps. I wanted to put these videos together for you with the finishing polishes I threw together on the panel, and the one-steps, and then the all-in-ones, and that will help those of you that are just getting started get a gauge of what they can do, because they're important when it comes to enhancements and one-steps. And if you're just making that next step up from basic cleanings to offering corrections in your arsenal, well, this will give you an idea of what works and how it works. One-steps and enhancements are important in 2 major ways to me. Those for beginners especially. It's a great way to start out and get some experience behind the polisher. And then also the thinner, softer clear coats that we are having to revert to going through California's EPA standards. We're going to have to get used to a water-based clear coat, which is quite different than a solvent-based clear coat. I'll explain that in great detail in a video coming up. That'll give you an idea of what to look forward to down the road, and then also how to deal with older paint jobs as well. At the shop here, I can tell you we have changed the mentality when it comes to correction. We do a lot less of the multi-step, and that's usually designated for a customized paint job or a classic or antique where the customer is desiring a deep cut, and they will sign off on the paperwork for that, and I will educate them on how cutting deep into the clear or the surface may cause issues down the road and what issues you could look for. But for the most part, an enhancement or a one step is what a lot of customers are looking for. When a customer comes to you, you want to give them the service they're looking for. Don't feed your own ego. Just give them what they ask for, guys. To shed light, there are a ton of detailers, and there are hordes of them on social media. They'll be easy to find that chase perfection, and that's mostly just to feed their own ego. Because I could tell you a huge percentage of my customers out there wouldn't have the eye to see some of the extra steps that we can take on their finish. So again, give the customer what they're looking for. If you want to over deliver, that's completely up to you. But that just mostly benefits your ego, and I would say drop it. It'll keep your overhead down. You'll be more efficient, more profitable, and a lot less stress. All right, so that was a good look at the last cut and how it can finish. We see in the first video that it did a great job cutting as well. So this is a great option for the price. And there's going to be small differences when it comes to the gloss and finish. And I want to put this out there that it takes 4 or 5 gloss units, difference of 4 or 5 gloss units for the human eye to pick that up. Some will say 2. That may be somebody that really has an eye for the painted surfaces. For most of the average person that is looking to improve the finish on their car, it's going to take 4 or 5 gloss units for them to see that improvement. All right, so now we are in the designated area for 3D1, so we're testing that out. 3D1, we grab that a lot. It is pricey for 32 ounces, but overall, it does a great job. And that's when you take into consideration cycle time, wipe off, not having fillers. Some will mention that it is quite a bit oilier than some of the other one steps. It can be. I don't have a problem with it. So if you're comfortable with 3D1, you could stick with that. There are a ton of other options. There are some that I didn't get on this test panel that I want to do another round with, and that includes the Turtle Wax One and Done. Can't get that in my area. That's very popular and sold out. Let me know down in the comment section if there's a one step that you absolutely love, you don't see in this video, and you would like me to take a look at. I'd be happy to do that. All right, all of these so far are doing a fantastic job bringing out that clarity, depth, and gloss. And that's with your fiber pad. If you were working on soft or clear coat, it would be a good idea to jump to a light polishing pad, and even if it's really soft clear, all the way down to a black finishing pad. Many options are available. Okay, 91 and 3/10 gloss units for 3D1. Let's mark that down and move on to the next section. Moving along to SONAX Cut and Finish. That did a fantastic job in the first video when we were taking a look at cut. How can it perform when it comes to finish? No dusting whatsoever. I had no problem wiping off the residue. If you have a problem with residue at all, to make it a little bit more manageable, just add a quick detailer, a quick spritz into the pad or a quick spritz into the towel you're going to wipe off the residue, and it helps break that up so you can lift it just a little bit quicker. Just under 90 gloss units. So we'll mark that down and move on. Now let's talk about this. In most situations, you can skip to the protection portion of your job, of your correction, and a lot of people would be happy with that. I myself would like to move on then to a next step if it's either in the budget or if it's my vehicle, it's going to happen definitely. And that's reaching for a finishing polish or glaze or even a jeweling step just to bring out that extra gloss and maybe reach the mid 90s or even leaning towards the high 90s when it comes to gloss units, and that's before protection. And that brings us to the last one step, and that is Flawless from Extreme Solutions. And we'll take our trip through the test section, wipe off the residue, and check the gloss units of this last one step. And there's another one that just barely fell shy of 90 gloss units. We'll mark that down. I'll give you the top three. Let me know, putting these two, part one and part two, together when it comes to cut and finish, and add in the price. Which one would you prefer out of all of these? And then what would you like me to add to this list that you haven't seen in this video? And that will take care of this short series on one steps. Coming up, there's a lot to come. Stay tuned. We're going to be doing a cut and finish on black paint with the rotary. We're going to squeeze that in. We also have comparisons with all-in-ones and much more to come. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I'll see you in the next video.